So preferences are the settings we have to play with in Adobe Photoshop, and these are things that basically run in the background. One good thing with Photoshop is Photoshop has lots and lots of settings we can customize to the very little details in Photoshop. So I'm going to just create a new file here, a new, say, print file. Let me just choose the A4 and then create, right? Perfect. Now, in order to access your preferences in Photoshop, you can come to Edit. That if you are on a Windows PC, you can come to Edit and come to Preferences, okay? So that's for Windows PC. For a Mac, you can just do Command K, okay, on your Mac, and then you have your preferences. So I'm doing Control K also on the Windows PC, so Control K, and that's the shortcut for your preferences. So you can either do Command K on your Mac or Control K on your preferences. And we're going to look at lots and lots of shortcuts in this course, and we're going to use a lot of shortcuts also. So you have to start getting familiar with shortcuts. Now we are on our preferences, and the first place we are on now is called General. Okay, so we have some settings under the General. So we're going to look at least most of these settings, or the most important ones I recommend, because there are lots of settings, and to be honest, most of them don't really require tweaking for Photoshop to work well. Okay, in fact, Photoshop just works perfectly just as it is, but I just want us to study this so that we kind of have knowledge on preferences. Okay, so we are on General, and we can see that the first thing we have is your color picker. You should not change this. It's either Windows or Adobe, or if you're on the Mac, it should be Apple or Adobe. So you should always leave it as Adobe as the color picker. Okay, and then we have the heads-up display color picker, which has been shortened to HUD color picker. We have it at hue strip, right, small. Now this is our color picker. You get, this is our color picker, and let me just close this and kind of make this bigger. Now this is our color picker, and we can see that this is our color strip, right? This is our color strip. So we can select colors, and of course you should know how to use the color picker by now already. Basically, we are kind of editing our color picker using this option. Okay, so the default works just perfectly. And then we have image interpolation. This is basically how Photoshop understands images. We have it as bicubic automatic. It used to be just bicubic automatic for several years until Photoshop introduced all these other ones, which I really don't pay attention to. So just bicubic automatic will do. And then we have these other settings. Okay, so we have auto update open file based on documents. So this will automatically update your file based on your document in your computer. So that's what this one does, and you can just uncheck it. It's not that important. So we have the auto show the home screen, so it will automatically show the home screen. Then use legacy new document interface. Wherever you see legacy or legacy, it means old-fashioned. So Photoshop over the years has had old-fashioned ways of doing stuff, which it maintained till recently, where they decided that we want to just remove these fixed old-fashioned ways of doing stuff. Okay, so you can actually enable those old-fashioned ways of doing stuff in Photoshop by enabling the legacy options. You get, so anywhere you see legacy, means it used to work that way as default, but because of newer updates of Photoshop, Adobe decided to remove that as a fixed stuff. So if you keep this option checked, you're going to skip being able to transform an image when placing it. Okay, so usually if you're placing an image, Photoshop gives you the ability to transform that image. So in order to remove that ability, you can just check this, but I don't recommend that. And then basically we have all these other ones, export clipboard. So for this option, Photoshop enables you to actually copy items on your clipboard and then go to other softwares and paste them. Your clipboard is basically a part of your memory where Photoshop can store things. You get, so you can say, for example, copy an image from Photoshop and then move to Illustrator and then paste it with this option on. So resize image during place, it's quite self-explanatory. We have always create smart objects when placing, so it's always going to create a smart object when you place an image or when you place an item. You get, so this should always be on also, because we always want to create a smart object, right? Because smart objects are good and they help us to retain the originality of our layers. So create new layers when brushing. All of these, some of these options are not really that important. When you're done, click next, or you can just go to the next one by clicking here. You get, so we also have these settings for our interface. So we have the color theme. We can make it bright, we can make it less bright, we can make our interface less bright and even darker. You get, so if the bright colors won't work for you, and they used to be like this in the past, but because these colors can really affect our eyes, so Photoshop has done the favor by creating other variations or other options for the color of our interface. So you can even go this dark, you get, and it's basically based on how comfortable you are. Then we have the highlight color. We can either make it blue. Okay, so if we make it blue, we see that it turns blue here. Here also turns blue. Here also turns blue. We can keep it as default. Okay, keep it as default. So that's for the appearance. That's for the color theme. And then we have these other guys here. And this is standard screen mode. You can keep all of these as default. Full screen black. You can just leave everything here. And for borders, so using drop shadows in places like this can tax your system to a certain degree, okay? Because it's way easier and less tasking on your system if you just use lines to display your borders. So let's use lines and use lines also here. And basically same with this one. So we can always use lines to display our borders. It's gonna be less tasking on our computer. You have some of these other settings: presentation, UI language, English, UI font size. We can see that mine is set at small. Right now we can make it very tiny, and then the sizes of our UI, of our fonts on our user interface will be tiny. So we can use large if we want, and so on and so forth. I'm just going to leave it at small, and we can actually scale UI to font. Some of these settings, to be honest, I never changed them. Okay, so we also have the workspace. We have these options here. We have auto collapse, iconic panels. You want to keep this guy off because Photoshop will automatically collapse your panels. You get, and you don't want that. And you have auto show hidden panels. So why would you show hidden panels if they are hidden? So you also want to uncheck this, and then we have open documents as tabs. It's going to open our documents as tabs, and it's on. You can leave this checked, and then we have enable floating documents Windows docking. You can enable that. And basically that's it for the workspace settings. We're going to go to the next one, to the tools. So for the first option here, we have show tool tips. Now tool tips are the tips we get when we select our tool or hover on our tool, right? So let's come here and just display these other tools by clicking and holding and just hover on this tool. We usually get tips. Okay, sometimes they appear, sometimes they don't appear. Okay, so we usually get tips on how to use our tools. It's not appearing this time. Maybe it's because I'm not connected to the internet. Let me see. Control K. Maybe I don't have it checked. Okay, I actually have it checked, but for some reason, some unknown reason, I'm not having the tips, right? So, but that's what the show tool tips option does. Okay, we have show rich tool tips. And all of these are options that give us tips on how to use certain options or how to use our tools in Adobe Photoshop. Okay, and we have over scroll, we have enable flickering panel. Some of these are very unnecessary really. We have zoom with scroll wheel, so it's going to use your mouse wheel to zoom if you have this checked. I don't have this checked. We have zoom resizes windows, you want to leave this unchecked, and also this other one. So let me check, let me see what other settings are important here. So for this one, it's going to allow the arrow keys kind of determine the rotation of your tips, okay? Or you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to adjust the rotation of your brush tip. Okay, so basically leaving all of this on is good. Basically that's all for that. We want to keep this guy off, this spring-loaded tool shortcuts. It just does some weird stuff, but you can experiment with it if you want, but for me I just recommend keeping it off. And basically that's what we need to do on the tools. And then go to next. We have history and content credentials. It basically has to do with how Photoshop handles your history. Okay, so that's that for this one. You don't need to change anything here. We have file handling, and this is basically how Photoshop handles your file, right? So it includes options like saving, okay, how to save your file, where to save your file, and so on and so forth. So we have image previews. We want to always have this as always save. Okay, so this option will kind of allow you to choose where to save your file. So I recommend always saving on your computer so that you have the most control over your file. Okay, but if you're having space issues, you can always save in your Creative Cloud. And we have enable legacy save. So like I said before, whenever you see legacy, it means there has been an old way of doing stuff. There used to be a way to save your files in Photoshop where when you come to file and then hit save as, you get lots of files types which you can save your image as. Okay, so Adobe actually removed this feature, okay, these multiple files with recent updates to the software. So you can enable these files by just clicking on enable legacy save as. Okay, so you want to always keep this on also. And basically these are the settings I recommend for the file handling. So we can go to next and go to export. So we have the quick export, and you can actually choose the format which you want to use for quick export. So it means if you come here and say, for example, go to export, let's say I hit OK, and then come to file and export, and then quick export, we see that I can do quick export as PNG. You get, but if I choose to change the format to maybe JPEG, I'll now be able to do quick export as JPEG, not PNG. You get, so that's the quick export option here. And then we have other options which you can go ahead and look for yourself, and I won't worry about the others. Now we have performance, and on the performance we looked at these settings actually from the previous video. So that's where we learned how to speed up Photoshop. So that's it for the performance. And then we have image processing. You didn't really need to change anything on the image processing. It's Photoshop doing its thing. And we have the scratch disks. Now these are the disks you have on your computer. So you can give Photoshop the ability to run on these disks, right? So it can run and then save files on these disks by simply checking them. So if you have multiple disks, you can just check all of them. It's going to help Photoshop run better. And we have the cursors, and now these are the cursors you use when painting. Okay, so when using your pen tool or using your eyedropper tool, you use cursors. So you can basically edit the way your cursors appear using these options. So for example, you can use the standard, which will give you this, that's under painting cursors, right? You can use the standard, which will give you this brush icon to paint with. So so let's say we choose the standard and hit OK, and just hit B for brush. You can see that this is what we get, right? This is what we get. So let's just right click and increase the size, and we can see that no matter how big your brush size is, you just get this brush icon. So the size of the brush icon does not increase. So that's one downside to this standard brush icon. So let's go back to cursors, and when you use precise, you're going to have this crosshair icon. You get it? So this also has its downside, but if you use the normal brush tip, you're going to have just this, and it's going to adjust according to the size of your brush. You get, so we can see with the big size brush we have the big size cursor, with the smaller size brush we have the smaller size cursor. So that's the best one to choose. We also have some other options here, which include show crosshair in brush tip. So you can actually show the crosshair within the brush tip, but you don't need that. You can show crosshair only while painting. So it's going to show the crosshair while you're painting. And we have this one which they call the leash, the brush leash. So if we have this one checked, just see what it does. So as you paint, let me increase the size, and as you paint, you see this magenta colored straight line following our strokes, right? Our brush strokes. So that's basically the leash. You can have it unchecked. And also for the other cursors, we have the standard, we have the precise. So just choose the one you feel most comfortable with. And we have the transparency and gamut. Now this enables us edit the way we want to see transparency in Photoshop. So for example, we have the grid color. So we have the light and we have the medium. Now you can see the preview here. We have the dark. You get. We can choose none, and it's just going to give us a white color. And that's not really good, because sometimes we paint white colors, right? We paint white colors and we can have white backgrounds also, or white shapes. So that doesn't really illustrate transparency well, in my opinion. So we can always keep it as small or medium size, and then light or medium or dark, whichever one works best for you. And units and rulers, these are of course the units that Photoshop uses to display measurements for us. So on the rulers, we can have it as inches, but if you are most comfortable with pixels, fine, you can have it as pixels. And then for the type, we have points, pixels, millimeters, and so on and so forth. So for column size, we have this, and for gutter size, we have this. We also have some other options here, like print resolution. So you can actually increase the print resolution. And we have screen resolution. So for print resolution, you always want your print resolution to be higher. So in case you are working and you intend to print that work, you should have higher resolution, okay? But for screen resolution, you don't really need a very high resolution for your screen, okay? So 72 will work just perfect as the default. Okay, and basically these are the settings under units and rulers which you should look at. And then we have guides, grids, and slices. So for guides, we have the canvas, and we can choose the color of our guides okay, on our canvas. So we can choose the color. We can even choose the line type. We can make it a solid line or a dashed line. Okay, that's for guides. So guides basically help us or guide us in placement of things or elements when doing design. Okay, so we can use guides to basically align things properly and place them properly. Guides are actually important. For grids, we also have the colors for grids if we want to work with grids. So we have the custom, and you can choose any of the color if you want. You can see that this is the custom color, right? Alright, the custom color is whatever color you choose, basically. So that's it for grids. And for slices, this works with websites, but we're not going to be working with websites, so we don't really care about slices. And for parts, this is the outline we get on our parts. Okay, so on our shapes and on our parts, basically this is the outline you get, and this is how thick the outline gets. This is the color, of course, and also for controls, so control color. And yeah, basically that's it for the guides and grids and slides. And this video is getting too long, so I'm just gonna rush the remaining things. Okay, remaining options. And basically we then have the plugins. So for plugins, you want to always have this show all filter gallery groups and names. So you want to always have this enabled, because if you don't have this enabled, some of your filters are going to be missing. Okay, so Photoshop is going to just remove some filters that it thinks are not really important, you get. So you always have to keep this on, and this has to do with your type. And I don't recommend changing anything here. So also with this and with this. For this product improvement, it basically allows you to choose if you want to participate in the product improvement exercise of Adobe. So basically that's it for preferences. We might be coming to preferences later on to do 1 or 2 changes. It's possible. Okay, so sorry the video really took this long. I just feel it's really important to handle some of these really foundational stuff, so that going forward we can handle the really interesting things with ease. Okay, so that's it for this video on preferences. Thank you so much for staying. See you in the next video. Bye bye.